Hey, it's Zach, and while I've been away from YouTube, I've been doing a lot of thinking about the political appointments and catching up on analysis of those. And, you know, it's been the typical disappointing run of crap from Obama as he continues to show that he has absolutely no interest in progressive ideas or anybody who's even remotely, anti-corporate. Let's start with him choosing good old Rick Warren, to do the invocation at his inauguration. Well, all you religious conservatives who are worried about him, taking to heart the words of radical preachers like Reverend Jeremiah Wright, well, you could stop worrying about that now. Apparently, Obama's all on the corporate hallelujah bandwagon, as he chooses Rick Warren, who is both anti-gay and supported that proposition in California, anti-abortion, and he's an evangelical. This is who he's chosen to deliver the invocation. Not to mention the fact that, I have a lot of problem with an invocation just in general, being an atheist and, asking God to bless our president and our country, this imaginary man in the sky. Well, let's get into some of his appointments now. Good old Tom Vilsack, going to be in the agriculture department. Well, that's really good, picking somebody from your agriculture department who's pro-ethanol, who worked for a firm that represented ConAgra and Cargill, and let's see, the supporter of the controversial biopharmaceutical crops. I mean, there are even people in, the industrial agriculture business who think that this is a little bit over the top. These are people who spray pharmaceuticals directly into crops, and he was a big supporter of this as governor. Despite the fact that it's a controversial measure and opposed by many, especially most environmental groups. And he also, this is like what he thinks about individual rights when you compare them to corporations. He was someone who helped ram through, against a great deal of opposition, what's called a preemption law that actually prevents local municipalities from regulating genetically modified foods. And so you can't make this regulation in your town. You can't get people together and say that none of the farmers in your community are allowed to use genetically modified foods. You're not allowed to do it anymore. And it's because of Vilsack protecting the rights of corporate assholes like Monsanto over your rights, which he does not give a fuck about. Now, how about Ken Salazar for good old Department of the Interior? Once again, over the objection of environmental groups. Well, why would they be, objecting to this guy? Well, this has been something that's been characterizing a lot of Obama's appointments. He picks people who are very, very bipartisan, which means that Democrats that seem a lot like Republicans. Or as I've been thinking of it too, it's he's looking for somebody who has a few Democratic talking points on their record that they can point to and say, hey, look, I'm a liberal, I'm a progressive, I'm a real Democrat, while meanwhile, basically being a butt boy for every corporate interest that comes down the pike. And Salazar is very much like that. The one guy on there with the unfortunate name of Kieran Suckling mentioned that he votes with business on subjects like endangered species and water rights. So, whenever there's a conflict between, endangered species or between industrial business, industrial agriculture, and that impacts on species or water rights. He comes down on the side of saying that agriculture does not need to be reformed. So once again, you have somebody who, maybe they like the environment, maybe they would like to protect things, but you know what? If it's ever a choice between protecting the snail darter and getting a few $1,000s more for some corporation, goodbye snail darter. He doesn't give a fuck. And then you have Arne Duncan, chosen for education secretary, a hometown boy coming from, Obama's Chicago. And, of course, he's part of the same, crappy machine that, like, Obama's part of. He's a machine politician, part of the Daily Machine. He's worked to try to secure additional funding for, like, No Child Left Behind. But I think more important than anything else is, like, philosophically, he's coming from the wrong direction. And the person who I think got this really well was Deborah Meyer. She was talking on the same Democracy Now! Where I was getting a lot of this information. She had this great statement, which I'm going to read to you, which is all about, basically about the philosophy. And well, let me just let her say it in her own words. It's not two sides. It's different views about the purpose of education, and there are different views about how human beings learn well. I think there's a very predominant view right now that has been called by the name of reform, and that has nothing to do with red and blue. It's a kind of market view of education, though. And I think there are a lot of people on the red side who are more close to my views, and a lot of people on the blue side who are more close to Arne Duncan's views. And that part does worry me, because I think we need a different discussion about what the point of education is. And I was thinking about the data there is about how few kids graduate, even graduate. After all, less than half, or half graduate at best, from Chicago schools. And that's excluding the number who never make it into high school in Chicago. But even those who graduate, how few manage to get to 4-year schools or get a BA? I think it's 3 or 4%. And it's that they're not prepared for the kind of intellectual flexibility, the kind of tough-minded intellectual perseverance, really asking questions, thinking critically. And I think that is essential for democratic society. And I suspect it's even going to be good for the economy, partly because politics and the economy overlap so much, as we can see these days. But I think we bought into, and Arne Duncan has bought into, the worst parts of the business mentality or the business model. I think there are things we can learn from the business world, but accountability is not one of them. And I think we bought into some of the shoddiest accountability mindset, in which everyone is forced to lie. High stakes numbers means you play with the numbers. There's something, I think, in sociology called Campbell's Law. The higher the stakes, the more corrupt the data. And Obama, I think, quotes data about Chicago's success, which I can't expect him to be an expert on. But I'm enough of an expert to tell you it's nonsense. And the test scores, the NAEP scores, which are the only test scores that are consistent around the nation, which shows no progress in the last 7-8 years in Chicago. I mean, kids who graduate our high school need to be kids who have learned to play with ideas. And that starts in kindergarten. Who learn to ask uncomfortable questions, who are in the presence of adults who are used to asking uncomfortable questions and persevering. But I mean, it's like George Carlin says, the corporate interests that increasingly are trying to influence our society, they're not interested in intelligent, critically thinking people who are going to figure out how they're getting boned. They want, compliant consumers who will not think critically about the stuff that they're being offered. But just in generally, I mean, looking at these choices, I would say that Obama is clearly not into sustainable food production. He's just not interested in it. I mean, these huge corporate interests result in the use of more pesticides. They're not more efficient. They don't produce higher yields. It's just a bunch of bullshit to shovel money into the pockets of people who are rich already, like most things. And I'd say that I find it really depressing, as much Obama's appointments so far, there aren't any progressives. I mean, it's representative of the philosophy that he was presenting, honestly, throughout his campaign. But I'd always hoped that, there was some kind of hidden, more liberal influence, and honestly, I was totally wrong about that. He doesn't care about any of it. I mean, his appointments prove it. His appointments prove it. Well, I missed you. I hope you guys have missed me. This is Zach Elliott at Feel Free to Argue. Back to depressing you again. Leave me some comments. Cheer me up.